And how we doing, everybody? Hello. Is the microphone working? The microphone is working, ladies and gentlemen. How are we doing? Hello. Happy Monday. Hope everyone had a great start to their week. Whatever the heck you were doing today, going to work, whatever it may be. I think you were all tuned in to Red Sox Twitter land today. There was a lot of news today, man. There was a lot of excitement, a lot of good vibes on Red Sox Twitter land. And, over the last couple of years here, there have not been a lot of good vibes, but today felt like the complete opposite, to be completely honest. It's nice to see some positivity in Red Sox Twitter land. You gotta love it. But we have a lot to talk about tonight. Another full show. We had a full show set up by noon today, for crying out loud. My goodness, you gotta love it. But where to start? The Red Sox maybe looking at two top starting pitchers to add to the rotation. That just sounds bonkers. I don't even know what's going on, but we'll talk about that. Willy Adames, there's a meeting set up at some point. What could that mean for Rafael Devers? We'll talk all about that as well. What else we got? Sox prospects updating their rankings. We'll dive into that a little bit. We got a little Juan Soto, of course. I think we're going to be talking about Juan Soto until all of that is done. I feel like I'm leaving something out. I know I'm leaving something out, but whatever. We're going to get to all of it tonight. Let's get to it here, shall we? Now, I think we got to start off with the news here today from Bob Nightingale. And he came out with his article to start things off for today. And the second talking point that he had, he titled it, Boston Red Sox Talk, a Big Game. He says here, no one is boasting about their plans to suddenly spend money and dive into the deepest end of the free agent waters more than the Red Sox. They have missed the playoffs 3 consecutive years, finishing last 5 times since 2014, and are now shouting to the world that they want to spend with the big boys and plan to be involved in the bidding for all of the top free agents. What the heck is going on here? My goodness. We were talking about budget last season, and now they're going to be putting in bids for everyone. What is happening here? But he goes on to say here, this is why they met with Soto, told everyone how it went, yada, yada, yada. And this was the key one that got everyone excited here today. They informed agents that they not only want to sign one of the marquee free agent pitchers in Corbin Burnes, Max Fried, and Blake Snell, but actually want to sign 2. 2? Listen. I was okay with 1. I was okay with even adding just some pitching this offseason. I was even talking myself into, at one point, someone like Sean Manaea, you know what I mean? Or maybe just a trade for Garrett Crochet. If that happened, I was cool with that. But now we're talking about signing 2 top free agent starting pitchers. What in the world is happening here? They are adamant on signing at least 1 lefty between Fried and Snell. Now, over the last week or so, I have been slowly convincing myself that it is very realistic to be able to go get Fried or Snell because you have been seeing the Red Sox connected with those two over the last week and a half, 2 weeks or so. So he goes on to say a few more things here. We'll get to that later, but let's focus on the pitching to start things off. And everyone, also, thank you for joining me here tonight. I see a lot of familiar faces in the chat. Paul, how you doing, my friend? Bay Sox, Caden, hello. David, my friend. Jeff, Dilcor, how you doing, my friend? Thank you guys for coming out. But we also got a little follow-up here from Mike Rodriguez at Mike Deportes. He says here, he actually tweeted out back, what's the date today? The 25th, so about a couple weeks ago. He says here, the Red Sox top priority is to sign Corbin Burnes, and if they can't, their other option would be Blake Snell. He retweeted this today saying, I continue to hear from my source that these 2 pitchers are targets for the Red Sox. They are making efforts to acquire these great pitchers. Now, obviously, we know the deal. We need to add something for the top of the rotation, but listen, today I was kind of thinking about it, right? Yes, it's exciting that maybe the Red Sox are looking to add 2 top guys. But I'm kind of wondering about the fallout, of everything else going on, right? Yes, Tanner Houck, Brian Bayo, these guys are penciled in. I have seen people out there, not when I say people, I mean just, people tweeting and whatnot, not any reporters or anything. People have been suggesting Cutter Crawford, maybe you could send him, I've seen either back in the Garrett Crochet trade or maybe some other deals possibly out there. But I would imagine, at least as of right now, as I'm sitting at my desk like the doofus that I am, I would think Cutter Crawford is probably going to be penciled in to this rotation. Now, obviously, you got the 4 or 5 spot. Actually, sorry, let me backpedal there. Lucas Giolito is going to be back in 2025. Remember, we have him. So I would imagine he's going to be in this rotation, right? I don't think he's going to be in the bullpen by any means. But let's just say right now, you got Houck, Bayo, Crawford, and Giolito. Well, you're looking at one spot here. Cooper Criswell, yes, put him in the long relief role, whatever it may be. So I'm kind of thinking here, well, if you add 2, what do you do here? So I would imagine if you bring in 2 guys, I would think Cutter Crawford at that point has to be moving somewhere, right? Houck, Bayo, I don't think those guys are going anywhere. Those guys are penciled. Crawford, though, I would think he would, if you bring in Corbin Burnes, I would think Cutter Crawford is going to be the odd man out, right? No offense to Cutter Crawford. I do like him. If he ends up being in the rotation next year, I'm completely happy with that. But, I mean, when you're kind of looking at it, I mean, if you add 2 of the top guys, I mean, what do you do there? But then you also think about Garrett Crochet. I also wonder, based on these reports that we're getting from Bob Nightingale, we have seen the Red Sox strongly connected with Garrett Crochet here in recent weeks. Could that mean maybe they're taking a step back in the Garrett Crochet sweepstakes? I'm not sure. Last that we heard from John Heyman, the Red Sox are one of the teams that are strongly interested in Garrett Crochet. But I just kind of find it interesting that now all of a sudden we're hearing they want to add 2 of the top starting pitchers on the market. And I'm thinking, I don't know. If you add, let's say you add Burnes and just Max Fried, just throwing that out there. Well, and you trade for Garrett Crochet, well, what do you got going on here? Again, how do you fit all this, right? I mean, Lucas Giolito, I imagine, is going to be in this rotation. So, it kind of gets me thinking, if you bring in 2 guys, how are you going to be able to fit all this? And also, if you were to pull off a trade for Garrett Crochet, I find that interesting. But let's just leave Crochet out of the equation for right now. Let's focus on the reports that we had today. So, Corbin Burnes. Listen, Corbin Burnes is a guy that I have thought, would be a great fit for the Red Sox for a long time. Listen, don't get me wrong. I would love to add Corbin Burnes. The talent level, I mean, yes, of course. I think this guy, now, is he at the Cy Young level that he was at, back a few years ago? He's fallen off a little bit, but when I say fallen off, that doesn't necessarily mean he's bad. I'm just saying he's not putting up that kind of a season that we saw, right? Where he was at 12.6 strikeouts per 9, under 2 walks per 9. He had 0.4 home runs per 9 that year. That is a disgusting number, along with the strikeouts that he had that year. He was filthy that year. This guy had a 1.63 FIP that year. Unbelievable season that he had that year. But he has not been able to replicate that since then. But he's still been very good over the last few years. I think Corbin Burnes is a guy that's going to be very steady for you. This guy's a workhorse. I would love to add Corbin Burnes, right? Again, not saying that he's starting to fall off. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying he's not putting up that same filthy season that he put up in 21. Completely okay if you bring him in, though, because this guy's been great over the last few years. So, but with Corbin Burnes, I just wonder. John Henry, you got to always think of habits over the years when it comes to ownership, right? John Henry has been a guy that really, other than David Price, he has not signed off on the long-term deals. Could Corbin Burnes be an exception? He just turned 30. I don't know. I would imagine Corbin Burnes is going to be looking for something 7, maybe even 8 years. He's been that good over the last few years. He's been the workhorse. I think he's going to be looking for a long-term deal. Will John Henry want to sign off on something like that? I know, you're hearing all this stuff, right? They're talking to the agents, telling them they want to go out, they want to be aggressive. But is Corbin Burnes going to be a guy that they fully commit to? I don't know. I just wonder, just based off of how Henry's been over the years. The only guy that he was willing to give a long-term deal to was David Price. But you got to remember, that was a bit of a reactionary kind of a move with the fallout of John Lester, right? Because when John Lester left, you really had nothing at the top of the rotation at that point. You needed to bring in David Price at that point. And in the end, yes, he helped you win a World Series, but the value of that contract was not great. I mean, that was an underwater contract. They had to eat money on that contract to be able to include him in the Mookie Betts deal. So again, Corbin Burns, listen, I would love him, but again, it's kind of hard to say just because you're hearing all these things, but when I look at the actions, Corbin Burns doesn't seem like someone that Henry would sign off on. However, this offseason feels different. You never know what could happen, right? If you did bring in Corbin Burns, I would imagine this guy would be your opening day starter. Right? That would be amazing. Corbin Burns, Tanner Houck, even if you didn't even add any of these other guys, that's a really good 1-2 punch, if you ask me, with Burns and Houck. But then we got a couple other guys here, right? He mentioned the lefties. You got Blake Snell. You got Max Fried. Let's talk about Blake Snell. Blake Snell is an interesting case. With Blake Snell, obviously we know this guy is just pure filth. What Lou Merloni likes to say, he is a pig. I love that. I don't know why. I just love that. That I don't know what it is. I just love that saying. He's a pig. That's great. Blake Snell, though, yes, when he's on top of his game, absolutely one of the best pitchers in the game, in my opinion. It's a matter of being on top of your game. That's been the problem with Snell over the years here. There always seems to be something with Blake Snell, whether it's injury, signing late into spring training last year, having the terrible first half, the high walk rate in his Cy Young season, right? There's always a little something with Blake Snell. But if you can keep this guy on track, healthy, making his starts, absolutely, I would love to have him in the rotation. And I could definitely see Blake Snell being a target, right? Because obviously he's very good. But when you think of Craig Breslow, he likes swing and miss in the zone. And Blake Snell has the lowest zone contact percentage. He had the lowest zone contact percentage last year. The guy gets a lot of swing and misses, right? He's filthy, right? Good velocity, great stuff. We know what Blake Snell can do here. Now, when you take if you're thinking of yin and yang, you look at the opposite, right? You got someone like Max Fried out there. And, Max Fried, he's been very solid, very steady over the last few years here with the Braves, helped them win a World Series back in 2021. If you look at last year, he did miss some time, had some arm issues. That didn't seem to be an issue this year. He made 29 starts. I believe he missed a couple starts this year, but in the end, he threw more than 170 innings. Solid year. ERA, FIP in the low threes. Max Fried, very steady guy, someone that any team out there would love to add to their rotation. Now, the problem with, let me be careful how I say this. Not really a problem, but the difference with Max Fried is he's not going to get you the strikeouts, the swing and miss that Blake Snell is going to give you, right? He's going to limit the exit velocity. He's going to get a ton of ground balls, so they're going to need to shore up that defense in the infield. We'll talk about the infield defense in just a little bit. But Max Fried absolutely is a guy I would love to have in this rotation. But here's why I wonder if the Red Sox may prefer Max Fried. I've talked about this a little bit in other streams, but if you take a look at the run values for the pitches, four-seam fastball was at a 3 last year. The sinker was at a 5. So the sinker was a better pitch for him last year, but he led the way with the four-seam fastball 33% of the time. If you think about what the Red Sox did with their pitching this year, they leaned away from the fastballs, right? Because these pitchers that that were in the staff this year, these guys had better pitches to play with, right? So they just said, hey, listen, that's a better pitch. Throw that one more instead of the four-seamer. Work it in a little bit, but, get away from that. I could absolutely see them doing that with Max Fried. I honestly can see a situation if they're like having a sit-down meeting with this guy, they're making a presentation saying, listen, You know how we did things this year with the staff. We got away from the fastballs, but we think that can work for you too. Get away from the fastball a little bit. Go more of that sinker, but also go more with the cutter as well. Now, the cutter was his least used pitch this year. You might be thinking, Robbie, well, why would he use the cutter? -1 run value. Had us batters were slugging 476 against it. Why? Well, I take a look here at the Stuff Plus rankings, right? Fried ranked 14th overall in Stuff Plus with the cutter this year. And so what that tells me is that this can be a pretty good pitch. He just needs to use it. How do I say this? Use it in better situations, right? I don't know. Maybe location was a problem with it. Whatever it may be. It still had good stuff on it. So I wonder if the Red Sox, they say, hey, your cutter showed some good stuff. Let's work on that a little bit. Let's harness that cutter a little bit. Let's have you lean with those two pitches instead of the fastball. I mean, you can see it right here when it comes to Stuff Plus right here, right? The sinker was at a 90, cutter was at a 93, fastball was at a 78. Max Fried's fastball, when you compare it to all the other fastballs in the game, he ranks near the bottom. So I wonder if the Red Sox see Fried and they say, you know what? We might be able to get Fried, on a cheaper AAV. And, maybe you have to sign him to another year over Blake Snell. I could see Fried wanting more years over Snell. I could see Snell maybe looking at something a 4 or 5 year deal. I could see Fried looking at a 5 or 6 year deal. So you might have to put on another year there, but you might be able to save on the AAV. Something to think about there. Fried would cost a draft pick at the end of the day. That is something to think about. Blake Snell would not cost a draft pick because he was not eligible for the qualifying offer. So it's interesting. I think you can kind of go either way. I think if the Red Sox are dead set on signing one of these guys, if they are very confident they're going to be able to land one of these guys, I wonder if it comes down to what happens with the infield, right? I could see a situation where the Red Sox, we'll talk about Willy Adames here in just a second, but if they improve the infield defense, I could see them leaning towards Fried, right? Because, maybe they can work with the pitch mix a little bit, but this is a guy historically that gets a lot of ground balls, right? So you're going to want to have a solidified infield defense behind him. If they're unable to bring in someone like Willy Adames to take over at third, or Nolan Arenado or Alex Bregman, who are better defenders than Rafael Devers, we'll talk about that in a second, then I could see them just looking at Blake Snell. I'm wondering if there's a bit of a domino effect here. We'll have to wait and see how all this pans out. But either way, it is exciting to hear that they want 2 pictures. That's bonkers to me. Kind of just a recap here. Corbin Burnes, I mean, listen, I'm not going to count it out. At the end of the day, you never say never when it comes to anything out there. Historically, the Red Sox don't usually go after a guy like Corbin Burnes, but the tide could be turning this offseason. There seems to be a different tone. Maybe Corbin Burnes this is going to be a different offseason, and they go after a guy like this. Corbin Burnes has said he wants to go somewhere. One factor that's going to weigh into his decision is a good future for the team. The Red Sox are set up pretty well when it comes to the future of the team. Corbin Burnes has been a guy, I think he could be a great fit with the Red Sox. We'll see at the end of the day. We'll see. But if they could land Burnes and one of Fried and Snell, oh my goodness. I mean, that is ridiculous. I'll also recap one more thing. If they are to bring in 2 of those guys, I wonder what that means for Garrett Crochet. Again, I said they've been strongly tied, but we also got a report today that the Phillies are involved. So that's why I wonder if you hear this from Nightingale, maybe the Red Sox could be pivoting. I don't know. Maybe the White Sox, that they seemed, I don't know. I'm guessing here. I'm speculating. Maybe they're leaning a bit more towards the Phillies because we got a report with the Phillies and the White Sox today that they're in extensive talks. When you really think about it from the Phillies' point of view, they can also put together a strong package. I know the Red Sox, they could do a package maybe around Willy or Abreu, But if I'm the White Sox, you got to look at it from this point of view too. It's not just about the talent that you're going to get back. It's also about the timelines as well. Willy Abreu's clock has already started. He's already going into his arbitration years here. Whereas the Phillies, they could offer a young, talented outfielder like Justin Crawford, the son of Carl Crawford. My goodness, Carl Crawford. But Justin Crawford, there's a lot of upside with him. He could absolutely be an everyday center fielder down the road, a leadoff guy at the top of the lineup for the White Sox, and his clock has not started yet. So I could see the White Sox being like, Justin Crawford, everyday, potential everyday center fielder. Hasn't obviously been to the major leagues at this point. You can throw in a couple other pieces with him. Maybe someone like a Starlin Caba. They got someone like a Gabriel Rincones down there. I would imagine the Phillies probably want to hang on to Aiden Miller. But I think the Phillies can be very competitive here. So I wonder if maybe there's a bit of a tie between these two stories, a bit of a connection. Perhaps maybe the Red Sox could be leaning away from Garrett Crochet. I don't know, but I will say this. If they can land Burns and either Fried or Snell, and you don't have to give up anything prospect-wise. I think we can all agree. Listen, you got the money. Go spend the money, right? We'll see here. Another thing, too, another thing to think about, if the Red Sox don't land Garrett Crochet, Willy Abreu still on the team, what could that mean for Abreu, right? We've all been thinking here Abreu could be a White Sox at some point. Well, if he doesn't go there in a Garrett Crochet trade, you got to think of maybe some other teams. I'm going to literally, anytime a bat pops up on the market for a trade, I'm instantly going to think of the Pittsburgh Pirates because Bob freaking Nutting doesn't want to spend money, right? I could see Ben Cherington going out there and pulling off a trade. And, could Willy Abreu be a guy that they could go after? Possibly, right? I think there's a lot of teams out there that could use someone like him, right? We'll see at the end of the day. But it's just pretty crazy to hear that you got maybe 2 free agent pitchers at the top of the market that could wind up in Boston. Blows my mind, man. Blows my mind. But let's get to the next story here. Let's talk a little Willy Adames, shall we? Listen, this has been in the news here. Well, not Willy Adames, but third base has been a topic of discussion over the last couple of days, right? We got the article from Sean McAdam yesterday. What a wonderful way to start your Sunday, getting just crazy news like that Rafael Devers could potentially, it's being discussed that maybe he could move off of third base to either DH or first base. He didn't really specify necessarily, but supposedly there is a conversation ongoing, or maybe Rafi could end up moving off of third base. When you take a look at the numbers, Rafael Devers, they're not good. Listen, I love Rafi. I hate to talk negatively about Rafi, but the defense just hasn't been there. I would love for the defense to just be better, and that would be the most simple solution, right? But in the end, it is what it is, and you got to play with what you got. You got to play with the cards that are dealt. If you have a chance to improve the defense, then yeah, sure. I know his agent has come out and said that's his position, that's where he wants to play. But listen, if you're trying to go out there and win a championship, and it's if there's a big need to improve there, then yeah, I can see the argument for it. Now the question is, this is a different conversation. Well, actually, we'll be talking about it in a little bit, but it's just a matter of where would Rafi go? There has been, some little tidbits out there that maybe Rafi could end up moving to first. That seems to be that is something that has sparked Red Sox Twitter land in the last couple of days. I could see the argument for him playing first base, but I could also see the argument for him not playing third base, right? Or first base, sorry. I think with Rafi, listen, for a third baseman, I would imagine if you can play third, you can probably play first base. Lou Merloni has said the same thing. He would have to pick up on some things at first base, but I think in the end, once you get over that learning curve, he should be able to play there. But I do see the argument for him not playing there, right? Another big thing about him moving off of third base, it's not just the defense. He has been banged up in the second half the last couple of years. That's something to consider, right? Rafi, you want the bat. That's what you want in the lineup, right? You got to keep that in the lineup. And if he's missing games, I mean, listen, that's just going to hurt you, right? You want the bat more than the defensive side of things. So I think I see the potential of him being a DH more than a first baseman. I understand you want to play out in the field, kind of fulfill that contract a little bit more. He's getting paid a lot of moolah, but I don't know. But then you got to think about Triston Casas, who we will talk about in just a little bit. But anyway, moving on to the actual story here. Bob Nightingale said the Red Sox also have strong interest in free agent shortstop Willy Adames, who is willing to move to third base. They have scheduled an upcoming meeting and have internally discussed moving Rafael Devers off of third base. My goodness, I thought I just popped up on the screen. That look at that man. That is a beef castle right there. They could also sign free agent Alex Bregman or trade for St. Louis Cardinals all-star third baseman Nolan Arenado. Now, I like Willy Adames a lot. I'm a big fan of Willy Adames, right? He has really emerged over the last few years. He was with the Rays a little while ago, went to the Brewers, and he's just been solid, right? He's been a little inconsistent at times, but this past year had a great year going into his going into free agency. Played 161 games, one game this year, hit 251, slugging at a 462, on base at a 331, the 119 WRC plus, 32 home runs. He's been a good defender in the past, but this year, not so much, right? The numbers dipped at shortstop this year, so that's why you are seeing teams being like, hey, can you play third? Can you play second, right? It's also not just the numbers, but it's also teams are, pretty set for the most part at shortstop, right? For the Red Sox, yeah, you got Trevor Story. Hopefully he can stay healthy. But I think the upside of Adames here is I think he checks off a couple of boxes, right? You need a few boxes. You need a right-handed hitter. He would improve defense at third base. And with Trevor Story being an injury risk, unfortunately with Story, he just can't stay on the field in the last couple of years. So if he ends up going down again, well, you got Willy Adames, who's a seasoned shortstop. Right. So I think he would check off a few boxes here, right? Alex Bregman, sure, he can play shortstop, but when you want a guy that has more experience at shortstop at the major league level, Willy Adames, in my opinion, would be the better option. I think he's also going to be a bit cheaper than Alex Bregman as well. So I think there's a lot of positive things with Adames. I know Alex Cora is very big on him. He's a big fan of Willy Adames. But you got to remember with Alex Cora, right? Adames, I could see Cora liking him a lot because of the versatility that he has. You got to remember with Cora. Remember how much he moved around in the field when he was in his playing days? I mean, Alex Cora even played a little outfield at one point. So he values versatility. That's not a secret, right? He's come out and said this before. So Willy Adames, I absolutely think this is a guy that I could realistically see the Red Sox adding. I tweeted this out today too. I just love the name Willy Adames, right? It just rolls off the tongue, Willy Adames, man. I feel like that's just a fan favorite kind of a name. I could see him being a very solid player for the Red Sox. But I also think this could work out in the Red Sox favor as well, where there has been some inconsistencies with the bat, right, and the defensive side of things. This year we saw the numbers dip. So I wonder if the Red Sox could maybe use that, a bit as leverage to maybe not have to tie themselves in to a big contract, say like 8 years or so. Fangraphs, they're projecting 6 years, 150, 25 million per year. I do think Adames is going to get paid. I've seen a lot of people say, well, really, Adames? He's going to get a big contract? I could see Adames getting himself a nice little payday, right? You'd have to give up a qualifying offer, so that's another thing to think about as well. But Adames, I think he checks off a lot of boxes, man. I think he'd be very solid, a guy that you can count on. I would love it. Now, he also mentioned here Nolan Arenado. We talked about Arenado last night, so I'm not going to get too deep into that. It's just funny because, in a video that I did here on this channel not too long ago, right, I came up with some ideas. Or was it a predictions video? I can't fully remember. But I talked about the idea of possibly Nolan Arenado. Red Seat Radio, another channel in Red Sox land here on YouTube, he saw the video and he put the idea on Twitter, and people were just ripping it apart. And I'm like, this isn't even my favorite idea. This isn't even my number one option to improve defense at third base. There were a few other options I had in place. And now it's just so funny that I'm seeing people start to warm up to the idea, right? You're seeing some other guys out there that are big on Twitter that are posting about it. They're like, I don't think it's as bad of an idea as people are making it out to be. And now you're starting to see people warm up to it a little bit. There are still, the people that don't like the idea, which is fine. I'm okay with disagreements. It's just funny now. You're seeing more people warming up to it. And I literally talked about this like a month ago or whatever it was, 3 weeks ago, a month ago. I don't know. I just find that funny. But Arenado, listen, he's not my number one option. I would rather have someone like Willy Adames because he has that versatility. He is younger, coming off a good season. With Arenado, yeah, you're starting to see the offensive numbers dip. You got to remember with Nolan Arenado, he's still a 3-win player last year. Yeah, the defense is elite. Listen, yes, the bat, I get it. You want to have good offense, but Arenado is still a guy. He can contribute a lot to the team. You can't forget about the defense, right? Run prevention is a thing. It just is. Whether you like it or not, we love the sexy offensive numbers. We love the home runs, right? We love that juicy looking WRC plus for all the advanced metric nerds out there like myself, right? You like seeing those numbers, but you can't forget about the defense. You bring a lot of value in the field, right? Arenado is still a very productive player. I know, yes, the power numbers are dipping, but I wonder if Fenway Park could be a good remedy for him. Now, if you go to StatCast, the projected home runs at Fenway Park do get lowered to 12. Arenado is more of a line drive kind of a guy. So, if you're looking at how the ball comes off the bat with him, you'd probably get a lot of monster shots with him and, either long singles, doubles, whatever it may be. You got to remember, though, everyone, when it comes to off-season coaching, listen, player development doesn't only happen in the minor leagues. It also happens at the major league level, and we need to start remembering that. These are human beings. Yes, I get it. He's almost 34 years old, but why can't Nolan Arenado work on stuff in the offseason? Why can't he work with coaching in spring training? Why? I mean, just because he's a veteran, he's been around, he's completely immune to making adjustments? I don't get that. Like, that's something I don't understand. These are human beings at the end of the day. Yes, they are players, but there is such a thing as getting better, even if you are 34 years old, or making adjustments at the end of the day. Arenado, yeah, I agree. The numbers are starting to dip, especially with the power. But I think if you maybe make a few tweaks, put him at a hitter-friendly park, especially for a right-handed hitter, I think you could see some good things. And most of all, he would absolutely shore up the defense. We can't, that in itself would be such a win, right? You could let Rafi just focus on the bat if he goes to DH. I think Arenado, it would not be the worst thing in the world. I would rather have Willy Adames, right? I would rather have even Alex Bregman, to be completely honest, right? Younger. Arenado, if it ends up happening, I could see a lot of similarities to Mike Lowell when they took him back in the Josh Beckett trade, right? Mike Lowell was coming off. You're looking at this and you're saying this is terrible. Go look at Mike Lowell in 2005. He was a negative win player that year, at least on Baseball Reference. I don't know what it was on Fangraphs. It wasn't good though, right? Mike Lowell came over and ended up being a World Series MVP 2 years later, right? So anyway, I'm going to be keeping my eyes on this. I think, listen, we keep hearing the smoke. We keep seeing the smoke. We keep hearing the words. I don't know, man. I predicted that the Red Sox would go for a different option at third base. I thought that was a bit of a bold prediction. Doesn't seem all that bold now. We'll see, though. We'll see. Let's move on here. And speaking of this whole situation, we have a little Triston Casas speculation, right? We had Ken Rosenthal on Fair Territory today. He actually put up a tweet of mine. I thought that was cool. I was literally watching Fair Territory today. I'm just watching it, whatever. I'm laying down on my bed, just, got my phone, just looking up, right? And all of a sudden, a tweet of mine comes on the screen, and I'm like, whoa. It was like a jump scare in a way. I'm like, what the heck? I'm in Fair Territory. Cool. So thank you, Ken Rosenthal. Appreciate you for adding me there. But he talks about Triston Casas. He was talking about Rafael Devers, improving third. But he brought up once again the idea of moving Devers to first base. I've already said how I feel when it comes to first base. I feel like a third baseman can learn first base. I think it could be a pretty easy transition. There's going to be a learning curve for sure, but it can be done. I don't think it's completely impossible, right? There's a lot of people out there that think it's a terrible move. The only thing I think is terrible about it, I would rather have Rafi at DH, just to make that clear. The only thing that I think would be pretty bad about it is that means you would have to take Triston Casas out, right? And what do you do with Casas at that point? Well, the only thing you do with Casas at that point, if you're moving Rafi to first, well, then he's probably going to be up for a trade. I would rather hang on to Triston Casas, right? He's had a lot of injuries, over the last couple of years here, even in the minor leagues. He has a bit of problem, staying on the field. But listen, Triston Casas, man, this guy has 40 home run potential. I mean, this is so advanced at a young age. The plate discipline is off the charts with Triston Casas. I mean, you've already seen how good he can be at a young age. I mean, imagine what this guy can do in his prime if he's healthy. I think that's the big thing. But, Ken Rosenthal, once again, is speculating. And I'm going to point this out, for myself as well. Listen, I would love to keep Triston Casas at the end of the day. But I'm always going to be open to different ideas. I'm always someone, I like hearing different perspectives. I can agree, I can disagree, but I'm always open to hearing other opinions, right? Maybe some opinions you don't agree with. That's okay though, right? It's okay to have conversation about it. The only way I would move Triston Casas, only way I would do it, it would have to be a good amount, man. It would have to be, you'd have to get a cost-controlled pitcher in return that is young, talented. I think that's the only way I'd do it, right? Now, with Casas, right? I mean, yes, like I said, he was hurt this past year, but he still put up really good numbers. I mean, yeah, the batting average, whatever, a little low, but on base still looked good at 337, slugging at a 462, a 119 WRC plus 13 home runs. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of talent there. There's no disagreement there. Now, Ken Rosenthal, he did mention in Fair Territory today that he thinks the Mariners, even though the Mariners have said they don't want to give up anything in their rotation, that he still thinks they're a good landing spot if something were to happen. He mentioned Bryan Woo. Now, if I plug this into the good old simulator that I know everyone just loves out there, I know you all love baseball trade values. It's not a perfect system by any means. It's by far far from perfect, right? Yeah, there's definitely some flaws, but I think it helps bridge the gap in terms of understanding value. Right? It really just leans into how Fangraphs values players, right? Very similar algorithms that they use there, very similar formulas. See, Bryan Woo right now, he is let me zoom in a little bit for those of you at home. Bryan Woo, right around a $46 million value. I mean, that's, yeah, that's a lot, right? I would love to get someone like Bryan Woo. I think I'd be willing to listen if someone like Bryan Woo, was on the table, a guy that's super talented, years of control, I would love that. It would still be very difficult giving up someone like Casas. I mean, listen, there's a lot of potential there. But even so, I don't know. Right now, I don't see something like this happening. Casas, as good as he has not been able to stay on the field. That's hurt his trade value, right? So at this point with Casas, you don't know what the durability is going to be like because he just hasn't really shown it. I don't think this trade happens. I don't think Casas ends up getting moved. I'd be shocked if Casas got moved. I really would. And even Craig Breslow has come out and said, pretty firmly that he thinks Casas is very talented, a guy that has 40 home run potential. The way Craig Breslow talked about Casas, saying that he didn't know where these reports were coming from, sounded like a guy that had no plans of trading Casas. So, Ken Rosenthal, listen, this is his job at the end of the day. He's been a writer for a long time now. He's a veteran in the game, and he's broken a lot of news before. He's given, pretty solid insight over the years. I think it's okay for the guy to speculate, In the end, though, I don't think Casas should be moved. I don't think he will be moved. I don't think it's even smart to move him at this point because his value has taken a hit. So really, you'd be selling low on Casas right now. That is realistic. And I don't want to do that. If I'm going to give up someone like Casas, I want to get full value in return. I don't want to sell low on the guy. I mean, let's just point that out, right? I don't really want to move Casas at the end of the day. When you look at the talent he has, yeah. I want to keep a guy that has 40 home run potential. Yeah, I'd love to get a picture. Maybe I'd be open to a conversation about it if you get a talented guy, but I don't know, man. I think I'd be more inclined. Listen, I love Brian Wu. I think the only way I'd be willing to listen is if you're talking about Logan Gilbert, right? Or George Kirby. I think that's the only way I would listen for it. That's just my opinion, right? Even so, I still see a lot of people wouldn't want to do that. And that's completely okay. You have every right to think that because Casas is very good. In the end, I don't see Casas going anywhere. I think in the end, Rafi, if he moves off a third, I think DH is going to be the spot, And then he maybe play some third here and there. I think if you bring in Adames, I think you could see a situation where Adames, if you bring him in, he could move around, right? Story, the durability has not been great. Maybe you could give him, manage his playing time a little bit. Adames can play some short some days. Second base. I mean, who knows what's going on with second base at this point? Adames could end up playing a lot of second base, right? So I could see a situation where Rafi is DHing, but then he can still get a decent bulk of playing time at third base. I think you can kind of get a little bit of everything. Adames, plays second, plays short, plays third. The days he doesn't play third, Rafi plays third, right? I could see a situation like that. That's why Cora likes the versatility. When you have the versatility, you can manage the playing time a little bit better. So moving on here. We're going to touch real quick on this one here because, there's not really a whole lot to talk about. Just want to mention it. Juan Soto, we still all have our eyes on this, but Bob Nightingale talks about the Juan Soto sweepstakes. He basically says there's really only 4 teams in play. Not like this is any groundbreaking news, but he says the Mets, the Yankees, the Blue Jays, and the Red Sox. Listen, at the end of the day, we all have to say the Mets are the favorites, right? I think there's a lot of things going for the Red Sox, for Juan Soto. But at the end of the day, money talks, and the Mets have improved their farm system. They're coming off a good season. You got someone like Francisco Lindor for the long haul, right? The Mets, if you told me, a few years ago with the Mets, if Juan Soto was a free agent a few years ago, I think that could be a different story because the farm system was not in a great place at that point with the Mets. It's in a better place now. So I think the Mets, you have to say they're the favorites, right? Especially with Cohen and the money that he can throw down. The Yankees, I think in the end, he'll give the Yankees a chance to match. Blue Jays, I don't see the Blue Jays being any sort of a contender. They're coming off a bad season. Vlad Jr. is not even signed up. The Red Sox absolutely have a lot going for them in this. Will it be enough in the end? Good farm. You could definitely sell them on that. They got money. They can throw down a big offer. In the end, I think you have to say the Mets are the favorites. But we'll keep this in the back of our minds for right now. Also, there was a report that the Phillies, he even said here that the Phillies, they were getting tied to Soto. There was a report that they have a meeting, but I guess they haven't even spoken to Scott Boras or anything. I'm not sure how accurate that is. The Dodgers, I don't really see the Dodgers being a player. I could see them thinking, okay, hey, if you don't get the terms that you're looking for, we're here. Maybe we can work out something creative with you. But in the end, looks like it's just going to be 4 teams. Now, moving on here. Moving on to the last story. We got Sox prospects. Let's talk some prospects here, right? And yes, I see you, Robert Little. The Blue Jays got the money. The Blue Jays definitely got the money, and I think they will put forth a very strong offer for Juan Soto. I think they're going to be big players, right? But you got to look at everything else. That's where I think the Blue Jays fall short, right? The farm, it's not in a good place right now. The future of the organization from a player development point of view, it's up in the air. It's pretty questionable at this point. So that's where I think the Blue Jays lack. I mean, yeah, hey, maybe they throw down $800 million and they can get it done. But let's talk some prospects. Some updates. Roman Anthony, number one. Roman Anthony is the number one prospect according to Baseball America, so no surprise there. I think a lot of people, their heads got turned a little bit here when Triston Campbell was put at the number 2 spot ahead of Marcelo Meyer. Marcelo Meyer, highly touted shortstop prospect. Listen, Triston Campbell, the Red Sox like this guy. They like this guy, right? He kind of fits the mold of what they're looking for, right? You're looking for a guy that's got versatility, power from the right side that can hit for average, but also very good plate discipline. Triston Campbell checks off a lot of boxes, right? He can play multiple positions. He can play in the infield. He can play the corners, right? Probably left field. But Triston Campbell, man, absolutely. After the year he just had, I mean, yeah, absolutely. Definitely, I think, needs to be the number 2. Marcelo Meyer, I still think there's a lot of upside with him, right? Obviously, he's still one of the top prospects in all of Major League Baseball. Marcelo Meyer, though, he's had some issues staying on the field, and that's going to come into play here. I think this is a big year. He needs to be showing that he can stay healthy. I think he needs to get himself into, I don't want to say better shape because he's not in bad shape whatsoever, but I think he needs to maybe, beef up a little bit, trying to, add a little bit of armor to the body there a little bit, right? Kind of get yourself toughened up for a season a little bit more, right? Hit the weights a little bit, get yourself ready for a full season. I think that's going to be a big thing with him this offseason. But Meyer, right? We all know the talent, right? Solid hitter, gets on base, hits for average, hits for power, plays a smooth shortstop, all right? Has a little bit of trouble against left-handed pitching, but Marcelo Meyer, man, we all know what he can do, but I do think Triston Campbell should be ahead. Kyle Teel at number 4, no question there. I guess there was a report today that the Red Sox see Kyle Teel. There's still some work to do there. And no surprise, right? Brady Montgomery. I'm excited to see what he can do this year after drafting him. You got Luis Perales, Franklin Arias, Chase Maedroth, Miguel Bleis, and Yoelan Cespedes rounding out the top 10. Listen, I'm a big Chase Maedroth guy. The guy gets on base. Kind of reminds me of I would say a Dustin Pedroia light. Just a gamer out there. I would not be surprised at all to see Maedroth in some kind of a utility role this year. He can move all over the diamond. I'm excited about him. I think this is a guy that really could impact this team this year. I could see sort of a situation where he gets called up, and I don't know, man. I wonder if this guy ends up being just really solid and turns into a fan favorite pretty quick. He's valuable to have down in the minor leagues. Solid hitter, gets on base, plays multiple positions. I could absolutely see him contributing this coming season. I know Franklin Arias, right? Obviously, he had a big breakout year in the minors. No surprise seeing him in the top 10 here. Great year, both with the bat, has speed, plays shortstop. Franklin Arias, I'm looking to see what he can do this year. Luis Perales, right? I think I saw a couple of people out there saying Perales probably shouldn't be this high because he ended up getting Tommy John. I can see that argument, right? Because, you're not going to be seeing him for a little while. Maybe he should be a little bit lower. But obviously, there's a lot of potential there. He was pitching very well before he went down. Miguel Bleis, I think this is going to be a big year for him. With him, he's been having trouble staying on the field, right? The numbers haven't really been there. The advanced metrics still look pretty good. So he could end up turning into, you could see these numbers really start to develop here over the next year or so. But I think this is a big year for him. He has a lot to prove, I think, this coming year. Hunter Dobbins really emerged this year, along with Richard Fitz, Peyton Tolley. I'm excited about him, man. I'm really excited about him. I think if you can add a little bit of velocity with him, oh man, I think you can really get something. Sandlin, right? Garcia with a breakout year this past year. And the Red Sox farm system is looking in very good shape at this point. Conrad Kaysen, I'm also excited about him for this coming year, man. Very excited. Love what the Red Sox farm system is looking like. In the end, though, we're all excited about the farm. But I think that's all I got here for tonight, everyone. I think that's all I got. Unless I'm missing something. Am I missing something? I'm not sure. But everyone, I'm going to wrap it up there. I think we are good. I see a lot of you still talking in the chat here. TD, Robert, man, thank you for coming out. London, I appreciate you, my friend. Glennial, thank you, my friend, for coming out. Everyone, we're going to wrap this up. We're going to wrap this up here. If you can on the way out, hit that like button for me. If you are new, think about subscribing, right? We're going to be talking Red Sox baseball here pretty much every single night, ladies and gentlemen, especially with all this news that we've been getting. It feels like we're going to have something to talk about every single night. But everyone, thank you again. Have yourself a great night. We'll probably be back tomorrow. Have a good night. We'll talk to you next time.